What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today I'm talking about the Cincinnati Bengals, what I think they should do this offseason. Let's jump into it. Now, before we fully start talking about Cincy and what they can do this upcoming NFL offseason, be sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed today's video. If you're new around here, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And of course, join me for a conversation down below in the comment section. What do you think Cincinnati can do to get better via free agency, through trades, in the NFL draft? Love to have your thoughts on all three of those subjects. So obviously the Bengals are a pretty good football team, made it to the Super Bowl, played in a pretty big game there. 8 draft picks, solid capital to work with, also $48.8 million, that's fourth in the NFL. So all that to say, there's a lot to work with this team, and I mentioned this in other videos, the Bengals and the Chargers not only have the advantage of playing with a rookie or a player on a rookie contract, like Philadelphia has that same advantage right now. The Bengals and the Chargers are awesome lottery ticket type of spot where not only do you have that advantage, quarterback on a cost-controlled contract, but they're legit top 8 guys in the league. So a lot of leeway here for Cincinnati, and that leads us into free agency. I would go ahead and cut Trey Waynes and Trey Hopkins, both Treys, unfortunately, cap casualties. That'd save you about $16 million. That inflates the projected cap. Actually, honestly, it's a little more than 16, so it'd probably get you up to about $65 million worth of cap space to work with. You can also move some other numbers around. This is all subject to change over the next couple of weeks. But then with that money that you get from cutting Waynes and Hopkins, I think that's nice place to start with when it comes to Jesse Bates. And also, I would bring back TJ Uzomah. It seemed like he was a big part of what they wanted to do and just a good culture guy to have around. Feels like that locker room really embraced him. He gets hurt in the AFC Championship game, and you can kind of see what that did to not only the team but also the city of Cincinnati, which are some things you have to take account for. If it's not Uzomah, definitely bring back a tight end. That did provide a lot of value this last season for the Bengals. And then I'd go after Ryan Jensen and 2 guards. And now, we'll see. This is obviously subject to change, but, a guy like Larry Duvernay-Tardif, I think would be a really solid add. Alex Kappa, maybe, if, the Buccaneers let him leave the building, considering Ali Marpet just retired. So going out there and getting a Ryan Jensen and 2 solid guards, you patch up that interior. I don't think the guards are really going to be that expensive. Laken Tomlinson could be a guy I could see fetch a decent-sized contract because he's still in his 20s. But, a guy like Larry Duvernay-Tardif is 32 or something like that, maybe 33 by the time next season begins. And, having gotten to see a whole lot of football because he opted out in 2020, didn't play until he got to the Jets last year. So that could be a nice, solid player to have on your roster and do that for cheap. So I think that's the route you go there. And then find ring-chasing veterans. I mean, there's been the talk about Rob Gronkowski. That's cool, that's fun, and maybe that's your Uzomah replacement, but also could just be, a guy who is a cornerback 10 years deep into his career, wants a ring. I could see Cincinnati legitimately being a place that allures those types of free agents, which is not something that you would often say about a team that plays in Cincinnati, but, the Bengals, Joe Burrow, that vibe, they have what it takes to be a player-driven atmosphere. I think that's going to lure high, big name value. Think about a Patrick Peterson, a guy who was obviously on a 1-year deal last year in Minnesota. I could absolutely see Patrick Peterson going to Cincinnati just because, hey, I don't have a ring yet in my career. It seems like a fun place to play because of that locker room, what Zach Taylor's got going. I'm going to go sign there for a year and go try to get my ring. So Patrick Peterson's actually a pretty decent example, but something like that. I think you could find some ring-chasing veterans and add some nice, solid pieces. And, maybe it's also guys like maybe Ndamukong Suh, right? You're not asking them to play 900 snaps instead. Maybe you can, roll it back down to 450 and you make them a really integral specialist, a designated pass rusher. You're going to put this corner, in matchups against bigger wide receiver, whatever the case may be. Finding a nice specialist that you always have that trick up your sleeve in the event that you need it. And then when it comes to the draft, out of the draft combine, it sounds like corner might legitimately be the path they want to go in round 1. But I think they're in a nice spot considering, if you do move on from Trey Waynes, maybe you can't sign a Patrick Peterson or some other veteran like that. 2 of the positions this draft class is deep at is offensive tackle and cornerback, and they're sitting at 31. And I think they should go best player available between the 2. Hey, if Andrew Booth Jr. falls to you at 31, jump all over that. If it's Trevor Penning coming to you at 31, pounce. Maybe it's Tyler Smith from Tulsa, or maybe it's Kyler Gordon, maybe it's Trent McDuffie falling into your lap. Do not force the issue. Go with the best player available between those 2 positions. It is an absolute area of strength, those 2 positions in this NFL draft class, and benefit from that. And then in round 2, once we get to day 2 of the draft, just take the other position in my eyes. And once you get to round 3, you see more IOL. Yeah, continue to address that position. You're going to have, injuries arise throughout the season, and, Ryan Jensen's upper 20s, and depending on what guard you sign, if it's LDT, into his 30s, it's nice to have that insurance policy, but also LDT is probably not a long-term contract, right? Who knows how long of a deal Jensen's looking for. Just arbitrary names I'm throwing out there, but continue to add to that. Like, that was such a glaring hole on this roster. Don't let it be that again in 6 years by avoiding it, by saying, oh, well, we signed these guys in free agency and then didn't address it further. Sign those guys, and then in day 2, day 3 of the draft, continue to add depth in that area. But I specifically like it in day 2. I have always found that, round 3 into round 4 is a really nice sweet spot to get good value on solid interior offensive line players that both make an impact right away, but also those guys who maybe it takes 2 years for them to really develop and become a starter by the time they hit year 3. And then in day 3 of this upcoming draft, for the Bengals, I mean, honestly, if you can go, they have a projected compensation pick in the 4th. If, those 2 4s, 5, 6, 7, you only go defense, I will not hate it whatsoever. Continue to add, potential project corners. Add a safety in the mix, right? You have Von Bell, who's actually a free agent this upcoming season. Maybe you don't bring him back, and maybe you're just trying to find a veteran, Anthony Harris, another arbitrary name to throw out there, sign him to a 1-year deal. So maybe in the 4th round with that projected, compensation pick, that's a guy you have in mind to take over in 2 years' time or a year's time after this upcoming season. Continue to plug away, linebacker depth. You can get better in that area. Pass rush depth. I really like, Cam Sample is one of my favorite picks last year. Not because I knew right away he would, make a huge impact or anything like that, but we got to see him on the field. But I also know what he could be as a potential long-term starting, fixture on that defense for the Bengals. And I think that's continued. That should be the continued focus once you get to day 3 of the draft. Add a linebacker. Add some edge. Add some corners. Add a safety. Add up some bodies on the defensive side of the ball just in case injuries happen, you have that insurance policy. And my final note, I mean, obviously this team's good, right? You don't make it to the Super Bowl by happen chance. You're not that lucky, right? Now I think the Bengals definitely benefited from the parity that we saw last year, but they're still a good football team. They deserve to be in the playoffs, and then once you're there, anything can happen. So this is a good football team, and they, like the Chargers, have that cheat code where you're playing with a top 8 quarterback in the league and a guy who's presumably going to get better. Burrow may well be a top 5 guy, like unanimously across the board. Everyone looks at him and says, yeah, it's probably a top 5 quarterback. That's an elite Super Bowl caliber dude, and you're paying him on a rookie contract. So take full advantage of that, and because of that advantage, patch up the offensive line, and you keep Jesse Bates around. That's all you did. They'll be playoff contenders in the mix for a Super Bowl conversation. But if they do more, then that's when this team gets really, really scary. But if they just fix the O-line, bring back Jesse Bates, this is a good team. If they do more, look out. This obviously could be one of the best teams in the AFC, toe-to-toe there with the Bills, the Chiefs, the Ravens with the bounce-back year. Anything's possible for this Cincy team, and a lot of that falls on the shoulders of Joe Burrow, who's in the thumbnail for a reason. But that's going to do it for my offseason checklist video for the Cincinnati Bengals. Tell me what you think this team can do to get better in the offseason, whether that's through free agency, trade, the draft, you name it. I'd want to talk to you about it down below. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you're new around here, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for me. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Till next time, my name is Deej. I'm signing off.